Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Spinnaker with Jenkins, made for each other. My name's Bo Roberts. I run marketing at OpsMx, and I'll be the host for the webinar today. Just a few announcements and some housekeeping before we get started. First off, I'd like to let everyone know that due to a last-minute scheduling conflict, our original speaker, Marky Jackson, is not able to be with us today. So the presentation is going to be done by our customer success lead, Srinivas, who is one of our regular presenters. The topic is going to be very, very similar to what Marky was going to present, but it's not going to be exactly the same. So Marky will present this topic again at a date in the near future, so keep an eye out for that. And moving on to questions. If you have any questions during the presentation, please type them into the question box in the Zoom control panel at the bottom of the window. We'll address questions during the presentation when it's appropriate, but most of the time, all the questions will be addressed at the Q&A session at the end. Another thing is poll questions. We'll be asking several poll questions during the webinar today. These are questions that we like to ask, to give our presenter an idea of who's in the audience, which allows them to sort of customize and adapt the presentation a bit if needed. These questions are completely optional, but if you can answer them, we'd appreciate it, and we'll share the poll results with you when it's appropriate. Okay, so moving on. For those of you who may be new to OpsMx, we're a venture-backed startup. We're based in Silicon Valley, and we help enterprise organizations modernize and transform software delivery with Spinnaker. We provide an enterprise-ready distribution of Spinnaker called Open Enterprise Spinnaker. We also provide managed Spinnaker as a service, as well as Spinnaker onboarding, training, and support services to help enterprises adopt and scale continuous delivery and Spinnaker in their organizations. So, okay, with that, let's get started. And we actually would like to start with a couple of poll questions, as I just mentioned. We usually start our webinars with these two poll questions, which are highly relevant and give our speaker a good indication of who's in the audience. So I'm going to put up a poll question right now, and I'll read them off for you as well. So the first question is, are you currently doing continuous delivery? And if yes, with what percentage of your production applications? So if you could answer that, that'd be great. The second question we've got here is your organization currently evaluating or using Spinnaker? So if you guys could answer those questions, I'll give you another 5 or 10 seconds, and then we'll take a look at the results. So let's see, looks like we still have some people voting. Let's see, so I'll give it a few more seconds. Yeah, if you'd like to vote, please get your vote in now, and I'm going to close this poll in about 3, 2, 1, and we're going to end it now. And let's see, let me share the results with you. So we're currently doing continuous delivery. It looks like we've got a good mix of people. We've got pretty much every category represented there. And Spinnaker, also a good mix, but good amount of people who are evaluating Spinnaker. That's interesting. So, okay, with that, thank you very much. And with that, we're going to move on. Let's see here. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. And I'm going to introduce our speaker, Srinivas, who's a customer success lead and one of our regular presenters here on our webinar. So Srinivas, take it away.
Thanks, Bo. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. We'll just have a quick look at Jenkins and then Spinnaker, and then go into a bit deeper into Spinnaker. So What is Jenkins? Many of you probably know about the Hudson project. That was a project. It was called Hudson in 2004, and subsequently, somewhere around 2007, 2008, things started, moving in, and then I think somewhere in 2010, 2011, the name was changed to Jenkins. Originally, it was written to ensure that builds can happen nicely, smoothly, without effort, without too much effort in terms of continuous integration. I think at that time, continuous integration phrase was not used, but it was more about building together. And we used to call it build as a system. And it's an open source tool written in Java with plugins for continuous integration, used to build and test your software projects continuously, designed to be easy for developers to integrate changes into the project. And it's clearly designed for very quick, continuous integration and continuous delivery. So what is Spinnaker? Spinnaker is also a continuous delivery tool, and it's been designed ground up for deployment, only for deployment, fundamentally for deployment, though it can do a lot of things common with Jenkins. And that can be helping to be calculated in how you deploy the software by granting visibility and control. This was open sourced by Netflix somewhere in 2005, 2015, I believe. And it's been supported by Google, and it's part of the Continuous Delivery Foundation. It's designed to be multi-cloud. So AWS, Azure, Kubernetes, OpenShift, various other flavors of Kubernetes, all of them are supported natively. And it is really designed for continuous delivery so that the software can be put into production in a consistent, understood, and frequent basis. So let's just take a quick look. Spinnaker versus Jenkins. Spinnaker is not a build server. Unlike Jenkins, where you can actually do builds either within Jenkins or also set up as a separate build server, Spinnaker has no build capabilities. Whereas Jenkins is a continuous integration tool, and it can also be extended to do a bit of other functions, which are part of the continuous delivery process. So let us take a quick look at what do we mean by deployment, and what actually do we meant in the past when we said we are deploying an application. In my younger days, I guess it's now more than 2 decades, close to 3 actually. Deployment essentially meant copying the executables, bouncing the server, checking if we can log into the application, done. Deployment complete. From there, things got more complicated. We had concepts of configuration control, ensuring that all the production server configuration is replicatable and make sure that everything is copied over, not just the executables, and so on and so forth. Things got more complicated. Then we started writing scripts. And these scripts, we used to have actually teams of people maintaining these scripts in large deployments. And a lot of people today, when they call deployment, this is what it is, a script, or using a package tool like Helm. Helm was originally designed to be a packaging tool. And Helm deployment in Kubernetes is essentially equivalent to doing kubectl apply -f and giving the file. That's all Helm is. And here the context of deployment is to give the YAML files to Kubernetes. And if Kubernetes is happy with them, we say deployment complete. What is deployment today, or in the terminology of Spinnaker? Deployment means that we already have an application that people are using, and now we are all used to 24/7. Everything has to be up and running. Whether it's a bank or it's a YouTube or Netflix or whatever it might be, we expect it to be available whenever we click the button. And now deployment means that we update an application while doing everything that is needed to ensure that the application is available to end users before, during, and after the deployment, even if the deployment fails. That is, in case the deployment fails, we simply roll back automatically. So users, the end users of the application, should not see an application downtime because we are trying to do an upgrade. So that's the current definition of deployment. Where you are in this, how critical it is that the application not be down at any point during the deployment process is, of course, a question of perspective. Now, Spinnaker has been developed in Netflix, and you can see that many companies have a quarterly release or a monthly release. From there, companies are moving towards weeks, days, hours, and potentially minutes. Netflix does thousands of deployments every day. While their worldwide network, people are watching Netflix and nobody even notices. That's probably at the leading edge of the technology. And Spinnaker comes from Netflix, so the entire mindset is to ensure that there should not be an impact to the end users. So if we are doing a deployment once in 3 months, and let's say the chances of something going wrong are like 1 in 100, then you'd probably see this error showing up in 3 divided by it's about 30 years or so, 20 years. Now if you're going to be deploying 100 times a day, this error is going to happen almost certainly. So it becomes more important that the deployment be safe no matter what. So it has to be safe enough to be used very frequently, a drop of a hat, and also maintain visibility and control as to what is happening, so that your entire continuous delivery becomes fine-grained continuous. So let's have a quick poll. How is deployment done in your organization today? Bo, you want to run a quick poll on this one?
Yeah, sure, Srini. So I'm putting up the poll right now. So if you could answer, this would be great. How is deployment done in your organization today? Got manual custom scripting triggered from Jenkins, tools such as Helm, Spinnaker, or other. Yeah, if you could vote, that'd be great, and I'll show the results. Okay. Looks like we still have some people voting. All right. Okay, I'm gonna close the poll in 3, 2, 1. I'm gonna close that, and here's the results. So it looks like this isn't too surprising. Pretty heavily weighted towards the manual custom scripting with Jenkins. So not unusual. Okay, Srinivas, I'm gonna turn it back to you now.
Thanks, Bo. So yeah, about half our audience, slightly more than half our audience is using some form of scripting. And the point here is that if we want to move towards a higher frequency of deployments, being able to deploy multiple times in a day, for example, then the same model that worked for deploying once in a month or once in a quarter will not work. And we have to look at alternative ways of doing the same thing. Spinnaker is an industry leader for continuous deployment. It's battle tested, millions of deployments have happened across the world. Google, Target, there are many big companies using it and supporting it directly or indirectly. And there is a very active community of developers who are continuously improving the application. And the best part is the tool comes with built-in best practices from Pivotal, Microsoft, Amazon, Google. Just to let you know, it has not become multi-cloud because someone has gone and developed, the cloud drivers for different clouds. Microsoft and Google and Amazon, they have developed the cloud interfaces, which is part of the cloud driver for Spinnaker. So you can see that the best practices for their all these clouds are being supported by the cloud providers themselves. Integrations, of course, Spinnaker and Jenkins are very well integrated, something that I'll hopefully show you towards the end of this session. But it's also integrated with a whole bunch of other applications, typically that you would need in a mature pipeline. For example, SonarQube, EchoScan, Jira, Slack for notification, and the ecosystem around Spinnaker is absolutely wonderful. And if this is not enough, then of course custom integration is very easy. Spinnaker is also future-proof. Now, when we are talking of deployment, as I said, in good old days when we deployed, we already had a server, the CPU and the RAM was already fixed, and then we went ahead and deployed the application and done. Story ended there. That was kind of easy. Now with the onset of cloud, you have load balancers, clusters, firewalls, auto scaling. After deploying, as the load increases, you might decide to increase the number of nodes in a cluster or scale the application in different ways. It becomes more important. It's no longer copying code from someplace onto the production machine. The process is a bit more complicated than that. And Spinnaker handles it very well. With a single view of all the resources in one place, you are able to look at the resource consumption. You are able to see how network traffic is flowing from load balancers to the end pods, something which is very useful if you are using any of the more complicated deployment strategies such as Blue-Green. Intrinsically, by design, it supports pipelines as code. So this makes disaster recovery very easy. And the overall direction of going towards GitOps is also on the way. So essentially, pipelines can be stored in Git, and we can make sure that the pipelines can be brought into Spinnaker and executed. Just a very quick note here, just like Jenkins, Spinnaker also can be installed with just one Helm command. It's a one step install. Jenkins, you do the same, and Spinnaker is also very identical. So let me quickly go over to the demo where I'll show you a couple of quick pipelines and show you how Jenkins and Spinnaker are integrated. For those of you who may not have seen Spinnaker, let me quickly walk you through the UI. What I was mentioning here, clusters, load balancers, firewalls, these are visible here in the UI. And you have functions also if you are using ECS Fargate or Lambda functions, if you're aware of what that is. So you can see that by having load balancers, you can see whether the load balancer traffic, how it's going, and you can, it allows you a lot of control straight from the UI. Something that is critical, particularly when you are going to have a lot of these clusters. So this gives is a very, very good, clear visibility into the resource usage. So if you look at the pipelines here, so I'm just showing two key pipelines. I have just created one pipeline called Jenkins webinar for this demo. And we can take a quick look at what this does. This show image is just a manual judgment stage. It's just going to stop there for me to press OK or stop and continue so that I can show you what it is. And then it's just doing a deployment. It's nothing. It's a simple YAML that will just get deployed. This is one of the simplest possible pipelines. And here, the objective is to show that if you go into the configuration, you see that in the automated triggers, I have selected Jenkins as my trigger. I have selected Jenkins as my Jenkins master controller. And then from this, it automatically contacts, Spinnaker contacts the API of the Jenkins and gets you the jobs. So you can just select from the drop down which particular job you want to be triggered off. And then there is a property file, file.properties, that we'll see shortly. And then we have all these notifications. So if you go to the Jenkins screen here, so I have kept this open for convenience. Of course, Jenkins job, as you guys probably already know, can easily be triggered using a variety of means, maybe a Git check-in or a Docker change, whatever it might be. So here I don't have any such thing. I'm just going to do a manual build here. So this build will get started and it'll take a couple of minutes. So while this build is going on, let's take a quick look at the other pipeline. This pipeline, K8s dev, is set up a bit differently. It is set up for a trigger from GitHub. Now, just as Jenkins job can be triggered from Git, in Spinnaker as well, we can trigger a pipeline from Git. So here I'm triggering a Git, a trigger is set up as Git. I'm triggering this pipeline based on change in REST app project in the OpsMx user on the GitHub. And this pipeline will trigger. Now let's see what this pipeline actually does. It does a build. And what the build does is you can see here, the stage type is Jenkins, and it runs a Jenkins job. So in the build part, what I'm doing is, again, you see, I select the controller, I select the job, which I want, and I again select file.properties. So here what is happening is, unlike in the previous case, Spinnaker is triggering a job in Jenkins. So the point was to show that it is possible to have a trigger from Jenkins and Jenkins job triggering a pipeline in Spinnaker, or vice versa. And Spinnaker also supports pretty much all the triggers available in Jenkins, be it GitHub or Docker, image change, and so on and so forth. And if you already have Jenkins and the triggers nicely set up, there is no need to change them. It's just how a pipeline gets triggered in Spinnaker, or how a job gets triggered in Jenkins. That's about it. As long as you're able to do it, that's fine. In the case of Spinnaker, it's so well integrated with Jenkins that you can do it either way. You can, the trigger happens both ways, because Spinnaker intrinsically polls Jenkins API for any changes in the jobs every 30 seconds or so to get this information. And then it does the deploy, which is roughly the same thing. So if you see here, in the meantime, this job has succeeded, and you can see our pipeline has come here for manual execution. As you can see, what I have shown here is the Docker image that is created by Jenkins. So you can see this here in the show image, which is a manual judgment. We have trigger.properties build number. This is a property that's coming from Jenkins. And if you see in Jenkins here, we have file.properties here, and this downloads it. And let me open it for you. And you'll see that it has created Equasec REST app 7 as the build. And if you go into Jenkins, into Spinnaker, and you look at the pipeline here, and you can see that it's showing you exactly the same thing. Because what is happening is that it gets the file.properties from Jenkins, and here we have decided to get the image name that it has created that we can go ahead and use. Spinnaker has an extensive mechanism called SPEL, spell, where we can use expressions for evaluating and passing variables between different stages, and also with the external parties. And what you just saw was a spell expression. And with the manual judgment stage, you can just see that, it will go forward. Coming back to our Git trigger, same thing, except that now we'll make a Git trigger change. So I have kept, for convenience, this page open. So let me just make a quick edit here. I'm just changing something. It's not exactly relevant what I'm changing. So I'm just changing some background color somewhere. The good thing is I don't think we need to see what that application is and where the background color is changing. So now that we have made this change in GitHub, this pipeline should automatically trigger. You can see that this guy has started, all right? And as soon as it has started, what has happened is it has triggered a Jenkins stage. And it also gives you the build number, and you can directly see that this build is in progress. So with the complete integration between Jenkins and Spinnaker, moving from Jenkins to a more specialized deployment tool is going to allow you to move the code faster from developers to the end users, which is the end objective. The faster you are able to deploy, safer it is, and it's safer it is for you to deploy more easily. You can deploy faster, you can deploy, not have as many mistakes. And even if there is an issue, we can have pipelines that will automatically roll back to the previous one. One of the features of Spinnaker, it's something which I have not had an opportunity so much to show you, is that it allows one-click rollback. So I have to find out where that rollback is. But from the UI itself, it is possible to roll back, and you can also have rollback as a stage in the pipeline, and based on a condition, maybe some sanity test you would run on the development, on the production environment, and then based on that, we can simply roll back. So that's roughly the demo I had planned. I'll give you some time now to ask any questions, or you'd like to show me to show anything else. Over to you, Bo.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Srini. Okay, everybody, we're gonna move to the Q&A. So if you have any questions for Srinivas that you'd like him to answer, please enter those now using the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen. Before we start the Q&A, I'd like to put up another poll question, and this is let me see here. Yeah, I'm gonna put that up right now. So we put this poll question up every webinar because you know, most of the time in webinars we get the request to send the presentation, and while we don't make our presentations publicly available, we are happy to send them to you after the webinar. So putting up this poll question, and there's three options. Basically, if you'd like us to send you the presentation, you can select that. There's two other options, though. If you'd like to have us contact you to schedule a demo of OpsMx Open Enterprise Spinnaker, our enterprise-ready Spinnaker distribution, you can select that as well. Or if you'd like us to contact you about, you know, more information about Spinnaker training, onboarding, or support, there's an option for that as well. What I would say is, you know, if there's something that you'd like to talk to us about that's not on here, you know, that's fine too. Just maybe select one of these options, and we'll follow up with you, and we'll help you with whatever you're looking for. So, okay, I'll leave this up for a little bit longer, and we'll start the Q&A. So Srini, let's start. First question is, could you show how the pipeline as code concept works in Spinnaker?
Oh, absolutely. So just double checking I'm not on mute. So if you see this pipeline we have here, let's go to configure, and you can see here pipeline actions and edit as JSON. Now, what you see here on the screen is your pipeline as JSON. This JSON you can edit, you can save it in Git repository, or you can just save it in a file, and whatever changes you make here will automatically be reflected. What you see here on the screen is just a UI that is acting out of this JSON. So with this, you can have a pipeline as code. This can go into Git. Once you have put this in a Git repository, let's say whatever this demo.opsmx.com server blows away, not to worry, just get this, copy paste it here, and you're set. And that you actually don't have to do. We have a pipeline for that, which simply pulls out all the pipelines from Git and recreates the whole system in just less than an hour. So we have about 150 pipelines for giving various demos, and all of them will be back in no time. While I'm at it, I can also mention a short one. There is also a concept called pipeline as template. Very similar concept as pipeline as code, or rather an extension of this concept. Once you export as a pipeline template, what is happening is that this pipeline as code will now have variables, so to speak. They're called template variables, and then you're going to also have additional variables called config variables. With this, it is possible to not recreate, but create a pipeline without giving the user, you know, the 20 questions or multiple options of doing. The user selects a template and has to give the values for the variables. That's it. The variable could be select an environment, and that's it. The rest of the pipeline is already fixed. So this makes a case for a much user-friendly onboarding of applications, which is there in the OpsMx Open Enterprise Spinnaker, which we call easy onboarding as well. I hope that answers your question. Next one, Bo.
Sure. Let's see, next question. If I'm using Spinnaker, do I still need Jenkins?
Well, if you are using Spinnaker and depending on what you would like to use Jenkins for, the answer is it really depends. Particularly if you are using Spinnaker with a Kubernetes deployment, it is possible to do pretty much what Jenkins does as a job stage in Spinnaker. Having said that, Jenkins has its place. It's developed for a reason. And typically, Spinnaker was not designed to replace Jenkins, but was designed to add to what Jenkins did not intrinsically have, which was the deployment capability. So depending on your use case, the answer is really depends.
Okay. All right. The next question is, can Spinnaker be used for GitOps?
Yes, we are getting there with pipeline as code. Spinnaker is expected to play a key role towards GitOps, where your infrastructure, your applications, everything will be synced with what is the state defined in the Git. And in case something changes and goes out of sync, the system will automatically resynchronize it. So we are going there, and Spinnaker is almost ready for GitOps.
Okay. Let's see, we've got another question here, which is, can we pass multiple parameters from Jenkins to Spinnaker?
Oh, absolutely. Just like here we passed file.properties with the image, the file could contain as many variables as you like, not necessarily an image and not necessarily one property. We have to, of course, use the appropriate the spell expression to read this file.properties into variables that Spinnaker can use. But yeah, absolutely can pass as many parameters as you like.
Okay, we got another question. Does anyone offer commercial support for Spinnaker? Well, I think you can answer that one, Srini.
Yes, absolutely. We do offer commercial support for open source Spinnaker, and we do have our own version of Spinnaker, which is security hardened, meant for enterprises.
Great. Okay, we've got another question. Does Spinnaker have a client which can be used to automate pipeline creation? I'm aware of Spin CLI, but having a client would help greatly in building Spinnaker pipeline as code.
Yeah, actually, OpsMx Spinnaker, the OES as we call, is a client of Spinnaker, and the easy onboarding is a UI-based application that allows you to quickly onboard applications, which essentially does that by making the appropriate API calls to the Spinnaker gate, which is exactly what Spin CLI does. So we do have a client for Spinnaker, which we are claiming, and we think it's going to make using the Spin CLI a lot easier.
Okay. All right. So those are all the questions we have right now. Everybody in the audience, if you have any other questions for Srini, now's the time to submit them. Shereen, why don't you, if you could move to the next slide in the presentation. I just want to make a couple announcements while we're seeing if there's any other. Yeah, go one more. Yeah. Okay, so we'll see if there's any other questions. In the meantime, as I mentioned, we've got this poll question up. I'm going to close that soon. If you'd like for us to follow up with you about any of these things, Spinnaker training, onboarding, or support, a demo of Open Enterprise Spinnaker. We also have something called AutoPilot, which is a continuous verification platform that's part of OES actually. And Srini, do you want to maybe just talk, just give a quick description of AutoPilot for people?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just try to see if I can get to AutoPilot slide. So AutoPilot, essentially at the core, what we have is that we already have logs and metrics that are coming out of applications. And AutoPilot takes these logs and metrics and runs a bunch of machine learning and statistical analysis algorithms on that to find out how it is different from a very similar set, maybe from a previous run. And the difference between the two can produce very, very interesting pieces of information very, very quickly. The use cases are just tremendous. This can be used in a quick production incident resolution. It can reduce debugging efforts during development. And it was specifically designed for deployments using blue-green strategies. So this is what at the core is, as far as AutoPilot is concerned. You can see that it can be used at various stages of the entire pipeline. So when we are running, let's say, regression tests, AutoPilot could be run in parallel, and it is going to pick up any deviations from whatever you have defined as a normal. An interesting example we had last week was that because we use AutoPilot for our own application development, all the regression tests passed conveniently. Nevertheless, AutoPilot caught a null pointer exception in the logs, which was unexpected. And turned out that there was a corner case defect, which probably would have gone uncaught. And the truth of the matter is, if all the regression tests passed, nobody would have actually looked at those logs. So this is one of the leading edge applications that can substantially reduce your overall pipeline pipeline operation costs.
Okay, great. Okay, let's see. As I said, if anyone has any last questions, please submit them now. It doesn't look like we have any right now. So if we don't get anything in the next 30 seconds or so, we're going to wrap up today's webinar. So once again, yeah, if you'd like us to follow up with you, select what you want in the poll question. I'm going to close that in about 5 seconds. And other than that, would encourage everyone to go to OpsMx.com and check out our webinar calendar. We're doing a lot of webinars these days on some really great topics. As I mentioned at the beginning, we are going to reschedule a similar topic that was going to be presented by Marky Jackson, our Director of Open Source Software today. Unfortunately, Marky was unable to make it today due to some scheduling conflicts. But we will reschedule that, and so please keep an eye out for that. And with that, we don't have any other questions, so I think we're going to wrap things up today. I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for your time.
Okay, thanks, Srini.
Cheers.
Bye, everyone.